Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is at work, and this is the new Civivi Brazen drop point. I haven't seen any other reviews on it, so I'm pretty excited to get to bring it to you guys. Now, there are other versions of this, including the Tonto version, but you can find them in, other, configurations, other colors, so on and so forth. So if this one isn't so much your style, there are other ones. So what does the word brazen stand for? The name of the knife, brazen, bold without shame. Sounds like a cool name to me, because I'm guessing it's not made of brass, because that's the other definition, but bold without shame. I like it. Now, I want to thank Civivi for sending this to me. I really appreciate it. They got a lot of amazing knives. Definitely check out some of their knives. They're pretty much top of the food chain when it comes to these, especially these budget knives. Not even the budget knives, high-end knives too. They're doing amazing work. So let's get into this one right off the bat. I'm not really big on size comparisons, but we're going to do some anyways. But first, this is 14C28N. You can see it right there. I'm going to show you, because some people thought it was D2, but it is 14C28N. So, 3.5-inch blade length. Total length is just under 8 inches. It's like 7.9 inches. G10 handles, deep carry pocket clip, steel liners. Now, some good size comparisons are the Civivi Riffle, same length. The Sencut Actium, another one, same length. And then the new button lock version, same length. So these are all right in the same category. I figured I might as well break them all out just to show you. So if you're wondering the size difference between these, not much difference. Some are a little taller and leaner, and here is, I'm getting ready to do the review on this. I probably should have done it by now, but you can see this is the same length as the normal Spyderco PM2. This is just the Warncliffe version, but it's the exact same length. And you can see it's a tiny bit longer at 8 inches, so it's a little bit longer than this one. Now, let's get into the action first, and then we'll talk about its cutting. And instead of sharpening it, I'm going to show you a couple different ways to maintain this edge through honing. So first off, the flipper tab kind of reminds me of the Sencut Actium, just a little bit. You can see they're a little similar, not identical, but they're very similar. So you have the flat portion up top where you can kind of just hook it and pull down. The detent is very nice, well-tuned detent. Civivi always has well-tuned detent, so I know this is without saying, but very, very snappy, very easy to deploy. You can do a push button, but if you're going to do the push button, you kind of want to hit the corner of it and kind of an in-between a push button and a light switch. But I really like the light switch where I just hook it and snag the jimping, because the jimping is done very, very well on this, and I like jimping that's done well. It just helps with the performance of the flip. Then you have the thumb studs, which also has gripping around the edges. And they're also well placed. They're in a great, great spot for your thumb. So you can use this ramp and it just lines right up. Bang. So as long as your thumb is hitting the thumb studs, it's going to be easy for you. And even with the reverse flick, like if I'm just holding it and I, pretend, I guess, to do a reverse flick, my finger lands right in the right spot every time. So it's really not just easy, but it's so it's like you have like a muscle memory on it that's very easy to remember. It's just, like it's in such a natural position. That's a better way to put it. It feels so natural to thumb flick this, or to use the thumb studs or the reverse flick. Both of them are extremely easy. And like I said, the detent is well tuned. And you can easily also slow roll it without pinching it. You don't have to like pinch and pull it out. You can just put your finger on top and slow roll it. Now, on the drop, it's very smooth. Incredibly, incredibly smooth. It's always past the detent because the detent is nice and early right there. So even if you're unlocking it up high, you're still past it. Lock bar, extremely easy to get to. You guys know I hate when there's not easy access to the lock bar, but there's very easy access. So you can hold it as high as you want and you're past. And then once you hit your thumb, extremely, extremely smooth. Very satisfying. And if you want to, with just a little bit of encouragement, it slaps all the way shut. Actually, with any encouragement, it slaps shut. You know, like, you don't even need really much encouragement. It's not a fall shut action, but it's very smooth. It's very close to that. So nice and centered, like most, you know, Civivis. I'm saying it like, you know, of course, but yeah, it's well centered. G10 backspacer that also acts as a lanyard hole. T8s all the way around except for the pocket clip, which is T6s. You can reverse the pocket clip to the other side. We'll get more into the pocket clip here in just a second. Internal stop pins. I like to see internal stop pins. You can see the stop pin, how it's hooked to the blade right there. Now it swings around right here, and you'll see it lock in. And that's going to create a lot of support from side to side, you know, laterally, because these two pins are resting on the liner, so it's not going to be easy for the blade to rock back and forth. And then in the closed position, it also acts as the stop pin. So you do have it nice and open back here, which I like to see. You know, it doesn't have to be, but you know, it winds up working out. Now, another thing I like is that when I do slow roll it, when I do get to when it's about to lock up, as soon as I get to that position, it just sucks it in. I like seeing that because it reassures me that it's locked up. Like, it's like you can't put it there and not have it lock up. And I like to see that because it tells me that the geometry for the lock bar is well done. And nice and early lockup, exactly where we want to see on a new knife. So awesome, awesome action, awesome lockup, no play, any direction. I've tested it many times already. So now let's get into cutting because, you know, let's talk about the ergos, then we'll get into cutting. So the ergos are really good. I do feel the clip, but it's a deep carry clip. So of course you feel the clip, you know, because this being this size knife, to me, this is like the perfect size EDC knife for my hands. You know, an 8-inch, you know, 7.5 to 8.5 inches. So of course, I'm going to feel the clip. It's a deep carry clip, and when you have a deep carry clip, they loop around right here, you know. So that's the end of my hand or, you know, the side of my palm. So I'm going to feel it, but it's not, I mean, yeah, I do feel it quite a bit, but it's not that big of a deal. You know, you learn to put up with it, you know, because if you want a deep carry clip, then that's just something you got to tolerate. Otherwise, you know, you prefer other clips maybe, you know, that are more flatter right here and they pop up a little lower. Anyways, in the hand though, it's still not bad. It's just fine. You can take advantage of this little spot right there, but it's still not too bad, and I can get up nice and tight and put my finger around because it is slanted, so I can take advantage of that and really cover it up for push cuts. So it's not bad. The thickness and the depth is a great thickness, great depth. Cutting with it, cuts great, man. This thing cuts fantastic, no problem. Passing through materials. It's very thin behind the edge. So since it's very thin behind the edge and it's almost a full flat grind, not quite a full flat grind, but because of the geometry, the cutting geometry and blade geometry of this flat ground blade works amazingly well. So good. It blazes through materials. This is how a flat grind should be done. I've seen so many flat grinds and it's as if they're trying to make a prybar or something. It makes zero sense. I always say, make the knife make sense. And in this case, it makes sense. The geometry is perfect. Nice and thin behind the edge. The blade stock thickness is relatively thin, but still very strong. It's going to be very durable. It's going to be an incredible work knife. And I worked with it quite a bit. I brought it to work a few days, and it, worked like a champ. And so slicing through material is very good. I also like that I can easily get it in and out of the pocket. We'll get into the clip in a second, but it comes in and out of the pocket, into action. Makes the cut. I can easily fold it, not just because it's so smooth, but just because the relationship between the lock bar and you using the back of the blade and slapping it shut is very easy. So I can easily get it shut and back into my pocket, and then back out, back open, make my cut, back in the pocket. And I like that. And, like I was saying before, that, you have a lot of control over the knife, through the handle and through the blade. You really know where the blade's at. And, it cuts very well. So really, really nice in the cutting department. Now, utility cuts. You do have this little area back here. Now, this, it's there. I'd rather if it was flat. It's not that big of a deal, but you use that area to push down into stuff when you do your utility cuts. Now, it just so happens that it lands in the meat of my hand, so I honestly don't feel it, but it might possibly be a little more comfortable if this wasn't pokey right here, but I really don't feel it, so it's not that big of a deal. But the utility cuts are great. The blade and tip is nice and acute. Strong yet acute, so it's not like extra strong or anything. I wouldn't pry with it, but it's perfect for utility cuts. And the blade shape is great too. Beautiful drop point blade, and I love how much the blade drops down. The taper of the tip goes down to a perfect point where, no pun intended, but it does. It drops down to a perfect point where I can easily get to the tip, make my utility cuts with a lot of leverage behind the cut. Now, if it was up higher and had a bigger belly, I would have to raise up really high and I would lose the leverage in my utility cuts. In this case, I don't. In this case, it has a lot of leverage pushing down into the material and then a lot of leverage pulling through the cut. So the utility cuts are great. The tip is nice and acute. It blazes through stuff. So it's a great working blade shape. And like I was saying before, you can get up nice and close to the blade for push cuts. So push cuts, draw cuts, pull cuts, all the cuts, they all work great with this knife. So great job on that. Now, the clip in and out of the pocket works great, and that's also going to wind up working out good for, use, being able to get it out and into action and put it back, because I always say that I like to be able to use my hands, even if I'm using my knife. It's a great benefit to be able to fold your knife up, use your hand, and get it back out when you need it, even if you're keeping the knife in your hand. So, like if I'm doing something with both hands, right? I'm holding this. I open my knife. I make the cut. I might need to take this thing I cut over here and put it together or, toss it somewhere. So I might want to close my knife and now use this hand with this hand still. Move whatever I need to move, open my knife back up, make another cut, fold it back up, use my hand again. And so it works really good for that. And then the clip works really good in and out of the pocket. So the whole thing as a work knife just works great. It's a perfect work knife. Nice deep carry clip. Now it's not inset, but it does have flat countersunk screws. So that's really cool. Like I said, it is reversible. But I never had a problem with it hanging up on the pocket or anything, that little lip of the, underneath the clip. Never had an issue with it. I do prefer them to be inset. Not that big of a deal, especially for this price. And the clip works just great. It does have some milling on the inside to bring down the weight. And this is a great weight. It's relatively light. Let's go over some bad things, and then we will get into honing this knife and, a few other good things before we close it up. So one thing, this sharpening choil, it's not as deep as I would like. And that's why I want to show you guys how to hone a blade like this, because you didn't get a lot of, if it'll focus, because you don't get a lot of meat to sharpen, you only have from right here to the tip of the edge to sharpen. Once you sharpen this away, it's going to start hitting the plunge grind. Okay, this is the plunge grind from here to here is the plunge grind right here. From right here, this line to this line is the plunge grind. So once I start sharpening back the blade, it's going to remove steel from here, and it will start removing it from here, and then eventually it will start hitting back here. Once it starts doing that, it will create a smile. Now, since the stop pins are internal, there's nothing blocking me from cutting in my own sharpening choil. That's not that big of a deal for me, but for some people it might be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get the most amount of life out of this blade by honing it, because you should be doing that anyways. You don't, just because you used your knife and it's starting to get dull, that doesn't mean you just go to a full-blown sharpening. Hone your knife, strop your knife, keep up with your edge. It'll last a very long time. So I'm going to show you guys how to hone here in just a second, but I would like to see a better choil. Next thing, like I said, I'd like to see the clip inset into the G10. It makes it better. It makes it also from no movement, even though this thing doesn't really move. I am happy that they use T8s, and they use incredible hardware. Civivi has amazing, amazing hardware, so I'm always happy to see their hardware. I know they use T6s on the clip. I'd rather see T8s, and especially since it's a removable clip, if you didn't have to remove it and it wasn't reversible, now would I rather have it be reversible than have the T8s? Yeah, I would, because I do want lefties to have, their option to grab it if they like to carry it in their left pocket. Next thing, I was talking about this. I wish they would have just rounded it a little bit more, even though it doesn't bother me in the hand, or just make it flat. You guys have seen that before. You can get a lanyard, tuck it in, or you might have to take the knife apart. I guess they made it where you don't have to take the knife apart to get a lanyard through, so maybe that's a good thing for lanyard users. And it really didn't bother my hand, so I'm very much nitpicking here, guys. It's impossible to not nitpick Civivis, because they do them so good that if you want to find some bad things, you're going to be nitpicking, unless if something actually comes with a problem, which is very rare from Civivi. Next thing, the black liners and stuff, they could, if you use it as a work knife and you are tossing it around, the clip's going to get scratched up. It's just the nature of the beast. And now this is my... The blade is a stone. It's like it's weird. It's not a stone wash. It's like a bead blasted and stone washed. I almost wish they would have just went with a stone washing. Now, the 14C28N is a fantastic steel, and it is a stainless, so you don't have to worry about it rusting very often. But any steel with a bead blast has the most likely chance, if any, of having corrosion. Like, basically what I'm saying is that if it was gonna corrode, it'll happen under a bead blast versus any other finish. So, but this really isn't a bead blast. It's more of like a stone washy bead blast. But I don't like bead blasts. I like stone washing. I just think that they keep the, the rust away and the corrosion away. But, it's very unlikely you're going to have any issues with 14C28N as long as you keep up with it. But I've seen bead blasted corrode on S35, on M390, on lots of different steels when they were bead blasted. But I can't even tell if this is actually a bead blasted. But in all, this thing's top notch, and there's really not too much bad. Their G10, I think the finish the texture they're putting on it is a little bit better. I used to complain about their G10 a little bit, saying that it seemed like it was a little bit of cheap quality. This doesn't seem bad though, so maybe they upped it, or maybe the texture is just better. I'm not sure. It's not bad though, so no complaints there. But let's get into honing and maintaining an edge like this, so you don't have to keep removing steel that's unnecessary if you can maintain it and keep it sharp. First, we'll test the edge to see how dull I've made it through all my testing. All right, so honing. Honing is basically just maintenance of your edge, or you can look at it as after you've sharpened, it's a way to There's a couple different ways to look at it. Honing can be your finishing stone. So after you've already sharpened and you got your edge, angle, and bevel, and now you're using your finishing stones. But you can also use those stones to maintain your edge in between sharpenings. And if a strop isn't taking out the little nicks and damages, well, then you can use a honing stone, honing rod. There's lots of different stones you can use. You can use a ceramic rod. You can use a little ceramic flat stone. You can use a big ceramic flat stone. You can use little work sharp tools. You can use an Arkansas stone. Lots of different ways to do this. So now as you're going to see, this knife, the edge is not sharp anymore. It's just ripping. So let's do, you can do the same thing based on all of them. You can use the ceramic rod, hold it at an angle, lightly rub your edge back and forth and try to hold the angle to match it up. You don't have to be perfect with the ceramic rod, but just that there probably would do really good. You can do the same thing on this rod, the exact same thing. You notice how I'm not like gripping it. I'm kind of just letting the weight of the blade drag across. Now I can do the same thing on this stone. This one I might be a little bit more aggressive with, just because because it's flat. That's really the reason why it's flat, so I can lay the edge angle on it, so it's a little easier to follow than a round stone, in my opinion. And now I would use these the exact same way as I'm using this. I just lay the edge down and make passes. Now I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm just letting basically the blade run across, or run the edge across without any pressure, just the weight of the blade basically. Couple passes. Now if this was taking longer than I'd like, I would go to my Arkansas stone and I would do this first, just a couple passes on each side, maybe 5, 6 passes, maybe 1 or 2. Just kind of depends on the damage. If there was just one nick in the blade, I would just do 1 or 2 passes just to line that nick back up. And yeah, that nick's gonna show up again after I start cutting, you know, after a little bit. But if you do this regularly, you can maintain your edge for a long time. Now let's just do a quick strop. We'll just use this because it's sitting here. And now instead of doing a full sharpening, let's see how it works on on some receipt paper now. We'll use the same piece. Holding it kind of weird. Oh yeah, a lot better. So much better. This piece is kind of ruined. I'm trying not to show the front of it. Let's just rip it. So much better. Here's another piece. This receipt paper is a little easier to cut too. And as you've seen, that took, what, less than a minute? So, I mean, maybe a minute altogether. I was talking a lot, so, but yeah, it doesn't take much time to hone your blade back. Just depends on how much damage. And this thing, I have been using it a lot. So it's to a lot of people, it would have been ready for a full sharpening. But when you don't have a lot of sharpenings before you either hit the plunger grind or before you need to add in your own sharpening choil or whatever, you know, whatever the case is, it helps to just hone and maintain your blade in between sharpenings. So I just want to say, all in all, fantastic knife. Great knife. I know a lot of people have the Tonto, so if a Tonto is more your style, you can definitely get the Tonto. And love the geometry, love the way it's built, love the action, love the way it carries. I love, you know, how good of a work knife it is, how fast the deployment in and out of the pocket, and, you know, just everything about it. Great placement on the thumb studs. The thumb studs are well placed for action. And yeah, great blade shape. All in all, top-notch knife. Thank you, Civivi. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Peace.